Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is, as always, pretty simple. We take a dense stack of sources, research, all this technical material, and we extract the absolute most important knowledge you need to be thoroughly informed and fast. We know you're curious, and you definitely don't have time for information overload. Today, we are doing a really critical deep dive into a piece of federal law that our sources, well, they consistently describe it as the law that quietly shapes the entire mortgage industry behind the scenes. We're talking about the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, or HMDA. It's not flashy, but its power is all about one thing: transparency. We're going to pull apart what this law collects, why that information matters so much, and how it really acts as the main tool in the fight against systemic bias in lending.
And it's so important to start by defining what HMDA is really for, because that's what makes it completely different from its peers. I mean, think about TILA, the Truth in Lending Act. That's all about disclosing the cost of credit to you, the consumer.
Right, the APR and all that.
Exactly. Or RESPE, which is about settlement fairness, fees. HMDA is.
Yeah.
It's a different beast entirely. Its purpose is not consumer protection in that, financial sense. It's systemic oversight. It forces disclosure to shine this forensic light on where and to whom credit is being extended.
Or, maybe more importantly, where it's being withheld.
Precisely. It is the mechanism by which we can actually test if credit access is truly fair across the entire country.
Okay, let's unpack this, because for you listening, whether you're prepping for a meeting or you just want to master this topic, our mission is to get the technical details of HMDA, the how, and connect that to the massive why of its social and regulatory impact. To really get why HMDA is so significant, we have to start with the history. It was enacted in 1975. So what was going on in the lending world right before that? What was the problem Congress was trying to solve?
The landscape was one of profound, but often completely undocumented financial segregation.
Undocumented, that's the key.
That's the whole problem. Before HMDA, you had discriminatory lending, what we call redlining, and it was pervasive. But because none of the data was public, regulators, the public, they had no real way to prove the bias was intentional or systemic.
So lenders could just use vague criteria.
Exactly. Vague criteria, maybe based on a neighborhood's demographics, to just quietly deny loans or offer much worse terms. And this quiet exclusion, it created these generational gaps in wealth and home equity that were just staggering. If you couldn't get credit in your neighborhood, that neighborhood's property values would stagnate.
And the whole community is just locked out of the main way people build wealth, which is home ownership.
Yes.
So the harm was obvious, but the people doing it were basically ghosts. The practice was devastating, but the cause was untraceable.
Perfectly put. Congress knew they needed more than just a law that said, hey, don't discriminate. They needed a tool to gather evidence proactively.
And the public needed to be able to see it.
The public needed transparency to hold institutions accountable. And HMDA was designed to be the answer to that fundamental information gap. You could call it a truth serum for the lending industry.
That brings up a really crucial distinction, one that I think trips people up a lot. HMDA is a disclosure law, but it's not the law that actually enforces fair behavior. Is that right?
That is the cornerstone concept.
Yeah.
You have to get this. HMDA provides the raw data. It's the evidence. It reveals the patterns of potential discrimination.
Like surveillance camera footage.
That's a great way to put it. But the actual legal prohibition, the enforcement, the laws that carry the penalties, that's the Fair Housing Act and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or ECA.
So HMDA shines the light. HMDA and the Fair Housing Act are the ones that actually, bring the consequences.
That's it. HMDA finds the problem. Those other laws deal with it.
Okay, so let's shift from the why to the how. If HMDA is all about disclosure, the mechanics of reporting have to be incredibly rigorous. What does a bank or a lender actually have to do?
Oh, rigorous is definitely the right word. They have to collect, maintain, and then publicly report really extensive data on every single application they handle.
Yeah.
This whole process, this mandatory data submission, it's done annually through something called the Loan Application Register, or LAR.
The LAR.
The LAR. And for anyone listening, the LAR is the central nervous system of HMDA compliance. If you hear LAR, you should immediately think HMDA data reporting. Not loan approvals, not fees, just data.
This is where we need to get specific. Data about every mortgage application is a bit too generic for a deep dive. For the people who analyze this stuff, what are the, say, 3 or 4 most critical, maybe non-obvious data points that HMDA forces out into the open?
Great question. The sheer number of data points, over 100 now, is what makes it so powerful. But let's focus on the game changers. First, applicant income. This is critical because it lets regulators compare lending outcomes for people with similar financial profiles but different
So
backgrounds.
it filters out the excuse that a denial was just about income.
It takes that excuse off the table. Second, rate spread. This reveals the difference between the APR on the loan and a benchmark rate, like the average prime offer rate.
So it's not just about getting approved, it's about what you pay for the loan.
Exactly. If a lender is consistently charging way higher rates to one group over another, even if they're both getting approved, that rate spread data is a massive red flag for potential disparate treatment.
That rate spread detail is huge. It shows HMDA looks beyond a simple yes or no. The cost of credit is just as important. What's another one?
Third, and maybe the most complex, is the property location, which is captured by MSA and census tract.
So they have to geolocate every single application.
Every single one. This is how you find redlining. A bank might have a great approval rate overall, but if you zoom in on the data and see they have 0 loans or a 90% denial rate in specific low-income census tracts,
It pinpoints the problem on a map.
it puts a pin right on it.
That must be an administrative nightmare, constantly matching addresses to census data, but I get why it's so necessary.
It is. And one more. The action taken and the reasons for denial. The LAR makes lenders report the final outcome: approved, denied, withdrawn, and if it was denied, they have to list up to 4 specific coded reasons why.
Like debt to income or credit history.
Right. It moves the conversation past speculation and right into the lender's own stated rationale.
So the whole point of all this incredibly detailed reporting is monitoring and accountability. It lets regulators, and just as important, community groups, see if banks are actually serving their communities.
And that active reporting of forcing lenders to log every outcome and why, it inherently discourages bad behavior. HMDA doesn't physically stop a loan officer from making a bad decision, but it makes damn sure that decision leaves a data trail that's going to be reviewed.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. This is often the most surprising part for people. The collection of demographic data. We're talking race, ethnicity, and sex on the main loan application, the 1003 form.
Yes, this is easily the most scrutinized part of the law. The rule is that the lender has to request this information, but for the borrower, it's voluntary. They have the right to decline.
But there's a wrinkle, right, for in-person applications.
There is. And it's designed to make sure the data is as complete as it can be. That's the visual observation rule.
Explain that.
If the borrower is sitting in front of the loan officer and they check the box that says, "I do not wish to furnish this information," the lender is then required to make a visual observation or surname determination and fill it in themselves.
Hold on, a visual observation. I mean, that's inherently flawed. It's totally subjective. Why would the law require someone to collect potentially inaccurate data based on what someone looks like? Doesn't that risk adding bias into the very system that's supposed to be monitoring bias?
That is an excellent critical challenge. And the regulatory answer is, well, it's pragmatic, even if it's controversial. The thinking is that monitoring fair lending is just impossible if the demographic data is missing.
So some data, even if it's imperfect, is better than no data at all.
That's the logic. Even if the data from observation isn't perfect, it provides a functional proxy when the borrower opts out. For the system to work, you need some numerical representation of the demographic makeup of applicants versus approvals. It fills a necessary, if you're right, admittedly imperfect gap.
This just highlights how important that data firewall we talked about earlier is. Let's nail down the relationship between HMDA and ECOA one last time.
It's the difference between collecting and using. HMDA collects race, ethnicity, and sex data strictly for monitoring to uncover patterns. But, and this is an absolute red line, that HMDA data can never be used in the decision-making process.
So the moment an underwriter looks at that and it influences their decision.
The second that happens, that institution has violated ECOA or the Fair Housing Act. Collection is mandatory for oversight. Using it for decisions is strictly illegal under other laws.
Okay, let's broaden the scope. What kind of lending activity are we talking about here? It's much more than just a typical home purchase loan.
Right, the scope is intentionally broad so lenders can't find loopholes. It covers home purchases, home improvement loans, refinances, and critically, it also covers all the applications that don't end in a loan, the ones that are denied, withdrawn by the applicant, or just left incomplete.
Which is vital because the data is useless if you're only tracking the winners. You need the whole pool of applicants to see where the blockages are.
Exactly. And it applies to a huge range of institutions.
Not just the big Wall Street banks?
No, not at all. It applies to depository institutions, your banks and credit unions, and also non-depository lenders like mortgage banks. The trigger to report is based on meeting certain thresholds for asset size and, more importantly, the volume of loans you originate. For example, for a while now, a bank generally had to comply if it made at least 25 closed-end mortgages or at least 100 HELOCs in each of the last 2 years. Those numbers change, but the idea is the same.
So if you're a significant player in the mortgage market, you have to participate.
You have to participate in this national transparency project. Local bank or national powerhouse, doesn't matter.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, once this mountain of data is collected every year, how is it actually used by regulators on a practical level?
It becomes the ultimate watchdog, and its main function is comparative analysis. When a regulator, like the CFPB, does a fair lending exam, they use HMDA data to run peer comparison tests.
So they don't just look at one bank in a vacuum.
Never. They look at lender A's denial rate for, say, minority applicants in Chicago, and then they compare that rate to the average denial rate of lender A's direct competitors operating in the exact same market.
Wow. That is an incredibly powerful tool. It completely removes the lender's ability to say, oh, well, it's just a tough market here.
Because the regulator can come right back and say, your peer who lends to the same kinds of borrowers in the same neighborhoods is approving 10% more of them. Explain that. If the data shows lender A denies, say, African-American applicants at a rate 50% higher than their local peers, that disparity is statistically significant. And it immediately triggers a deep dive investigation into that lender's policies, their training, everything. HMDA doesn't prove guilt, but it finds the statistical anomaly that gets the whole process started.
And this data also feeds into the Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA, right?
It's integral to it. The CRA requires banks to serve the credit needs of their entire community, especially low and moderate income areas.
And the HMDA data is the report card.
It's the primary tool. That geocoded data, the census tract info, is what's used to evaluate if they're meeting that obligation. If the HMDA data shows a big blank spot over low-income neighborhoods, that's going to crush their CRA rating.
And to wrap up the timeline, it's an annual report due early in the next year, and then the whole data set becomes public.
And that public disclosure piece is central to the law's power. This isn't just data for government auditors. By making the full data set available to community groups, journalists, advocacy organizations.
It ensures accountability isn't just an internal policy, it's defined by external scrutiny.
If there's unfair lending happening, HMDA makes sure the data is out there for the public to find it. It makes exclusion much, much harder to hide.
So what does this all mean? The fundamental takeaway here is that before HMDA, inequality could hide pretty safely in the shadows of institutional decision-making. HMDA forces those lending patterns, the granular details of who got credit, how much they paid, and where they lived out into the open. The law is always about reporting, data collection, and enabling oversight. And that, in turn, acts as a deterrent.
And this all comes back to professional responsibility. For you, the mortgage professional listening, collecting this data accurately is mandatory. Your careful compliance with the LAR isn't just some bureaucratic task. It reinforces your personal responsibility to uphold fairness, to ensure every single applicant gets a fair shot. Your individual work contributes directly to this massive national data set that allows our whole financial system to, hopefully, self-correct.
It's pretty profound that a data collection law can carry so much weight in the world of civil rights. As a final thought for you to mull over, consider how HMDA's transparency, just by revealing these patterns of exclusion, acts as this indirect but incredibly powerful moral compass for the entire financial industry. And explore how that constant public access to lending data fundamentally changes the very definition of accountability for these huge institutions in a way that, direct case-by-case regulation could never achieve on its own. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.